so I just want to go over a little bit of a basic carburetor operation video so you guys can understand a little bit on how these things work. So this is a dual Dellorto. This is off the Volkswagen Beetle. So really it's quad carbs. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 quad carbs, dual bank, 2 carbs, 1 per bank. So what's happening here is when you push the throttle down, you're opening up a plate inside of there. So before we get into that, let's just start with, so the fuel is being pumped into this little inlet port right here. Okay. Now the inlet port feeds out through this needle valve right here. Okay, and you have what's called a float. Now this float is sitting inside the sealed little container, and as the fuel gets pumped in, the level of the fuel rises and the float pushes up and closes the needle valve. So this float is constantly going up and down and opening and allowing fuel to come in and closing to stop the fuel flow. So one of the aspects of carburetor tuning is your float height, which you can just go ahead and bend these little tangs right here. But every carburetor has its own sweet spot for the carburetor float height. This one, for instance, is level with the deck, but that's something you got to play with. So yeah, so the fuel comes through the inlet, fills through this bowl. Now, so this is the throttle plate. So when you push your foot to the floor, or you push your foot at all, you're opening up this throttle plate. And this throttle plate is opening and allowing more air to go into the engine. At the same time, it's the carburetor's job, depending upon the position of the throttle plate, to meter in a precise amount of fuel into the intake. So everything's traveling down into the engine through the small little intake plenum. The way it does that is through the usage of what are called jets. So this is a jet. This is an idle jet. Now if you look, you can see that very small hole. Okay, that hole is a specific size. So for instance, this one is a 58 size hole. And this is the idle jet. So while the engine's idling, fuel, because the throttle plate is closed, is being metered through this little idle jet, and it sits inside here. And so it's just this jet that's basically only allowing a precise amount of fuel into the engine at idle. So if your mixture's too rich or your mixture's too lean, you would adjust your idle jet, which actually, on these carburetors, they allow you to adjust idle settings. This is the idle speed adjustment. So you can manually adjust as well on top of the idle jet, the idle fuel ratio. Now, along with the idle jet, you also have a high speed and a mid speed. So as you open this throttle plate, the carburetor, the engine's going to need more fuel. So you just move to different jets. So down inside of that plenum, more holes are exposed as you open this throttle plate up, right? And so as you start to go to mid throttle, another jet takes over. And that jet has its own calibration, its own number. And so these are all the various aspects of the throttle and how the fuel is metered in based upon how much throttle you're giving it from the carburetor. And that's basically it.